Hello everyone, my name is Gus.
Hi, I'm Woody.
Today we have another video from our good friend, Mr. John B. Allen, Mr. Ballin.
That's at least 100 comments now just by you just doing that alone.
Mr. Ballin. So he has this series, I don't know if you've seen them before, if you're watching this, called the top 3 places you can't go to but people went anyway. And this is one of the places covered on part 4. This was suggested to us several times, and it's about Jacob's Well. So let's take a look.
In central Texas lies a stunning natural wonder called Jacob's Well. It's this beautiful Clearwater spring that every summer when the weather gets really hot in Texas, people converge on Jacob's Well and enjoy swimming in the water. But it's not just for casual swimmers trying to avoid the heat. It's for daredevils that strap scuba gear on and dive down through Jacob's Well through a 10-foot wide shaft that leads to one of the most intricate and dangerous underwater cave systems in the world. Jacob's Well is broken up into 4 chambers. As you move from chamber 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, it gets harder and harder to squeeze through the narrow spaces, and each of the chambers gets smaller and they get darker because you're losing sunlight, and they just become overall much more difficult to navigate the deeper you go. Imagine you put on your scuba gear and you hop into Jacob's Well and you start swimming straight down. Now there's going to be what looks like the floor of the well, and then at the center of it is a 10-foot wide shaft that goes straight down. And if you swim down through that, you're going to reach the first chamber, which sits at about 30 feet and goes all the way down to 55 feet. In that first chamber, the sunlight still hits, so there's algae, there's wildlife, and it's where rookie scuba divers will spend their time in Jacob's
Caverns.
At the bottom of the first chamber is another shaft opening, but it's more narrow than the very first one you went through. And that shaft, that tunnel, is actually what makes up the second chamber. And it brings you down all the way to 80 feet. So from 55 feet to 80 feet, you are in the second chamber, and it's basically a tube. Any diver that's going to be in Jacob's Well has to be aware when you are in the second chamber on your ascent to not go down the false chimney. The false chimney is this opening that looks exactly like the main exit out of the second chamber into the first chamber, but it's not. It's a dead end that loops around before you hit a wall, and you got to go all the way back out. So hopefully you have enough air at that point. The second chamber attracts novice scuba divers and intermediate scuba divers. You still have light coming in, but it's definitely more tight, it's more claustrophobic, and because of that false chimney, it's a little bit more hazardous going into the second chamber.
Of course, some will criticize him and us for not saying have enough gas. That's the real terminology, because air
doesn't have to
what
be
we're
air.
breathing. Yeah, whatever. But more importantly is that false chimney. The way to avoid that would be a line. Again, it keeps coming back to a line. We'd follow our line, so we wouldn't go to the wrong chimney.
Which is the bottom of the second chamber. There is a very tight squeeze that you can barely get through with your tanks on that will bring you into a very small room that is the third chamber. At this point, the sunlight is gone, and there's all the silt and loose gravel inside of the third chamber that if your fin so much as knocks it, it will float into the water and then it will blind you. The third chamber is only from 80 feet to 90 feet, so it's only 10 feet of water. Generally speaking, you only see expert divers going into the third chamber. At the bottom of the third chamber is this heavy metal grate that sits over this tiny little opening, and that is the opening to the infamous fourth and final chamber of Jacob's Well. No one can describe what it looks like inside of the fourth chamber because, one, as soon as you go in there, it's impossible not to kick up a ton of silt. So you're going in blind. But two, anyone that has attempted to go into the fourth chamber and maybe has been successful has died. There are literally divers that are deceased inside of the fourth chamber.
Really?
And after about a dozen people died trying to get into that fourth chamber, they finally just sealed it up.
Is that true, everybody out there in the comments? Nobody has ever survived this fourth chamber.
Challenge accepted.
I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm blown away that is the case. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I've never heard that. I mean, I hear that it's pretty tight, and then there's no point on going into it because it's so tight. But I don't remember anyone ever dying there and their bodies being there. In that or any other cave, by the way.
Well, yeah. I mean, you may not remember it, but that sounds pretty factual the way he's stating it.
I hear, but people get the facts wrong sometimes. And again, I haven't researched this, so I might be wrong. And feel free to tell me in the comments. You tell me in every video anyway. But I don't remember at all people dying on the fourth chamber. However, the one thing really that I wanted to comment is not so much about the people dying there, but it's the whole, like, if you go in there and you kick up silt, then you can't really see. But I think I remember Jacob's Well is a spring, and there's water coming out. So even if you kick up silt, the water should take it out.
Well, it depends on where. I mean, you know, we dive springs everywhere that we dive in Florida.
Yeah.
Some are super still. So that section may not have the flow of other section. I don't know.
It could be.
I'm just curious about that comment, though. Wow, that's amazing.
But if you were to pry open that gate and go into the fourth chamber, you would have to remove your air tanks, push them into the fourth chamber.
Oh, wow.
And then you'd have to wriggle your way through while keeping the mouthpiece in your mouth into the fourth chamber that, again, we don't even know what's in there.
So Ed,
in 1983,
right
24-year-old college students Richard Patton and Clark McConnell entered Jacob's Well around 8:30 p.m. They were both experienced scuba divers. They were in an advanced scuba diver class with all the certifications for that. They had dove Jacob's Well before, and they wanted to check out the fourth chamber. They got in the water. They went through that initial shaft into the first chamber. They continued into the tunnel that was the second chamber. They wriggled their way into the third chamber, and they reached the gate. Using some equipment they brought with them, they were able to pry open this gate, and Richard Patton was the first one to go into the fourth chamber. He removed his tanks and pushed them inside of this opening, and then he began headfirst to slither inside of this fourth chamber opening while Clark waited. And Clark would later say that as soon as Richard had pushed his way and had actually made it into the fourth chamber, Richard comes screaming up back out of the fourth chamber. And Clark realizes that he doesn't have a mouthpiece in. He doesn't have scuba tanks. Richard is desperately trying to wriggle his way out on a breath hold because he's dropped his tanks, and he's reaching for Clark to help him get pulled through this hole, and he can barely get out of this hole. And as soon as he gets free, Clark takes his mouthpiece off and he jams it into Richard's mouth. And so they begin buddy breathing. One guy breathes while the other guy holds his breath, and then they reverse that back and forth, back and forth. That's not something you would do on a dive for a long period of time.
Or on any dive, right? Even when you are an open water diver, a beginner diver, for those of you who are not divers, you have two regulators. So you can share one and breathe out of the other one. It's like minimum equipment that you have. Even if your second regulator is terrible, which is what most divers do. They have the cheapest regulator they can get.
Or they have an air source too, where their low pressure inflator has a built-in reg.
Right, but nobody's buddy breathing, right? And of course, we don't. There's people that are gonna be like, well, you don't know what equipment they have or whatever.
Or I don't know if they couldn't reach it or whatever. I don't want to. I'm not going quite as far as you. I mean, there's obviously some reasons why they did that.
Right, but
I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that they had to do that.
It just
for some
doesn't
reason.
happen. In real life, it should never happen.
Open water, non-overhead environments, it does.
In
should
caves,
never happen.
in caves, it happens less because we have two separate tanks just for emergencies for rebreather divers, and each one of them will have a regulator. So I can literally, if my rebreather is working, give somebody one regulator, give someone else another regulator, and the three of us get out of there just with my equipment.
But remember, we're on rebreathers, and we have separate tanks that we bail out to.
Right.
And they're not.
But open circuit cave divers also have at least two tanks, at least two.
Yeah.
Each one of them with a regulator.
Interesting that they for some reason they had to do that.
It's an emergency procedure, and you need to get to the surface as soon as you can. So the pair calms down, they're buddy breathing, and they're making their way back up. They're leaving the equipment that they lost in the fourth chamber, and they're kicking their way up, and they get back into the third chamber. They make their way up into the second chamber.
How do you buddy
they're
breathe
it out,
through those
kicking
tubes?
it out.
Yeah, but I'm different than you on this. I'm more complimentary of the guy that saved him. I mean, I don't know why they had to buddy breathe. So let's assume they had to. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. He stayed calm and he saved this guy's life. Like, it's okay to be critical, but it's also important to praise. Like, I'm proud of him.
Clarity.
Okay, I'm just proud of him for saving anybody that saves somebody's life in a situation like this.
Okay, so
deserves praise. I don't know the other facts behind why they
think of the entrance to Eagle's Nest, which is a tube, right? Think about buddy breathing through there.
It would be brutal.
I mean,
but we can't even buddy breathe in our configuration. Our necklace regulator, I guess if you were like this close to me, like us, right? There's no way
you can be far.
Or you could take it off. you could take it off and hand that to you, and now you're not buddy breathing. But you can't buddy breathe. You need to give somebody a regulator. But, in this case, I don't know.
And that's why in cave diving, we have a 6-foot long hose.
Definitely.
So you can pass it to somebody and they can swim in front of you. Even in single file, you can get out through a chimney.
Yes.
But these guys are body breathing, according to John, according to Mr. Ballin. How do you body breathe through a chimney?
It
like
would be...
one guy goes feet first, and then they are face to face and like body breathing as they single. Yeah. Dude, that is hardcore recondo.
Definitely.
Like that is insane.
Definitely. Matter of fact, we should try it one time and see if we can even pull it off.
That's ridiculous.
All right, I'll try it with somebody else. Let's try that one time. I want to try that. All right, let's go.
And then their heads hit the wall, and they realize they've gone down the false chimney. And what's even worse is they hear that awful kaboom, which means you have no air in your tanks. Clark, who had taken a full breath before this had happened, he immediately turns and starts swimming and manages to get out of the false chimney and makes it to the surface before he drowns. But Richard wasn't as lucky. His final few moments were spent in total darkness with silt kicked up all around him. He's got no air. He's got no idea where to go. He's desperately trying to swim up, but he keeps hitting the wall of the false chimney before ultimately drowning.
No, everything I just said was blown out the window. I'm going to actually criticize myself. Remember I said we got to praise him. He saved him. He did the buddy breathing. He saved him.
At the end, it's like, see ya.
He's not. They ran out of air, and that didn't work. So Woody...
Yeah.
No bueno.
Like...
Oh, man. I did not know that ending was coming. They ran out of air. I mean, they're breathing off that one tank, buddy breathing, hit a dead end.
Terrible.
Terrible. But why... I'm not dwelling on the buddy breathing as much as you. I'm now going to go back to, where's the line? That's the bigger question. Is all you got to do is follow the line.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Divers went down to retrieve his body. They found him jammed up at the very end of the false chimney.
They had it. They had it. It's all they needed was the frigging line.
Well, they needed equipment, knowledge, training, not go diving, and follow the line. That was the last one. And off gas. And on and on and on and on. So there is 6 rules of cave diving that we follow, and that prevents situations like this. Really, really terrible story. Assuming that all happened. I mean, to me, the most amazing thing is that if they were in fact buddy breathing, if they were in fact, I breathe, you breathe, I breathe, you breathe.
Be tough.
If they were in fact doing that, to make it to the false chimney, it's a mind-blowing achievement. To me, I don't think I can do it.
You would do it, dude, because if you're, I'd be holding on to you, and it'd be like, fine, you take 4 breaths if I need one.
But remember,
we're going to save each other.
Only one person fits. It would be extremely
Somebody's coming out backward.
Number 2 thing I wanted to add, for those of you who are not divers, or for those of you who are divers and have never gotten to this position, which I applaud you for that. You don't run out of air like this. That's not how it works. You've been down to 0, right, on a tank. I've been down to 0 too. And they actually, in most open water classes, they make you breathe down to 0, meaning they close your tank so you can feel what it's like. It's an accelerated way to do it.
It's an emergency buoy in a sense.
Yeah. But in real life, when you run your tank to 0, you start to feel it. And the reason for that is because the regulator, the second stage regulator, the part that goes in your mouth, that is rated to operate normal to a pressure. And the pressure varies by brand, but it's typically, let's say, between 120 and 150 PSI. 150 PSI is about 10 bar, right? So once your pressure gets low to 10 bar or 150 PSI and less, you will start to feel difficulty breathing. The regulator doesn't work well. It still gives you air, but you're like sucking it. You're like, like, give it to me, right? So this is not one of those where I'm like, we're body breathing and we ran out of air. No, those 2 guys would have noticed 5 or 6 breaths before they ran out of air that they were in trouble.
That's true, but nothing they can do. They may have noticed. It's like, oh crap, we're running out of air. Keep on going. Like, they don't know that's the false exit. It doesn't matter that they notice they're running out of air.
It's, once again, you don't have to try to disprove me in every time.
No, I'm just.
I'm just saying.
Don't get defensive. Otherwise, there's no purpose of me sitting here, right?
It's not about getting defensive.
What
All
I'm telling you
is
it doesn't matter
right.
if they notice that they're running out of air, if they're in an emergency and they have nowhere else to go.
I'm just adding that fun fact that you don't run out of air like that. Like people might be afraid that, oh, what if you just suddenly run out of air? That's not a thing. You don't suddenly run out of air. It takes a few breaths before you actually. You will know that it's coming.
Anyway, I thought they had it, and I was praising them.
I was excited too.
Such a bummer that they actually went up the wrong chimney. They would have made it.
Yeah.
And he would have saved them.
We do get a question from time to time about when we're going to Jacob's Well. When are you guys going to dive Jacob's Well? When are you guys
fine this evening to head there.
I would love to go today and go dive it. The challenge is apparently they don't allow scuba diving anymore of any kind. You know, if not, we would go because it's not even that deep. It's not like a super deep or complex cave. It's literally a tube down that goes until it's too narrow to keep going.
Okay.
And it's just a spring, and there might be some solution tubes, which are those false chimneys that, you know, John was talking about. Solution tubes. But if you follow the line, you go to the exit, just like every cave.
Or if there isn't a line, we'll put one in.
And we would love to do that. There's some videos, by the way, on YouTube.
Why isn't it open anyways?
I don't know. Maybe it's a lot of people have died, or a lot of the several deaths that I've heard from Jacob's Well have been people that are untrained. You know, let's just go down as deep as we can go type of people, not cave divers. I don't think cave divers have died there. Trained cave divers.
And also comment on that. Has anybody survived the fourth chamber? I mean, we know here somebody didn't again. That he died.
Well,
here.
He didn't die in the fourth chamber.
But he died. He's went in the fourth chamber and he did not get back to the surface alive. So
there's
did anybody ever get in the fourth chamber and still alive? Let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. And in case you haven't watched that video about our reaction to Jacob's Well, I'm gonna leave it right here. It's more information, more people dead. But there's a cave map, so you can check it out.
Bye, everybody.
See you in the next one.